I heard that Dan Lanning has had a rallying cry this season with his team, and he's saying, hey, Tim Murray is not giving this team enough credit. Let's go out and prove him wrong. I think you are giving the Ducks enough credit going into this game. I don't think you overlook a playoff game like this. And by the way, Dan Lanning and that coaching staff, those guys are so young and enthusiastic.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Welcome in. Another edition of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Murray, joined, as always, on Thursdays by the host of the Circa Friday Football Invitational, co-host of VSiN Primetime, the one and only Matt Youmans. By the way, just a quick reminder to all of you, you heard us talking about it on Monday. The College Football Playoff Guide is out right now over at VSiN.com, so shout out to Adam Burke, Steve Makinen, a lot of best bets in there as well. So check that out over at VSiN.com. So, Matt, I was thinking today it would be a little bit different. Next week we'll go in depth on the 4 playoff games. We're still going to hit on the playoff games, bounce around a little bit on the bowl games as well. But maybe just kind of initial thoughts of the matchups and what bets we hit. So we'll go quickly in order. We also have Army-Navy, which we can touch on a couple bowl games prior to the playoff. But the first matchup we get, Matt, Friday night down in Norman, Oklahoma, a rematch of a game we got in the middle of November. Oklahoma won that game 23-21, but as many of you know, it was a game that was not dominated by any stretch of the imagination by Oklahoma. They got a pick 6. They were outgained by almost 200 yards. What do you make of Alabama and Oklahoma? Both teams that I think it would be fair to say are kind of limping coming into the college football playoff.
There's no doubt about it. Both these teams are limping into the playoff, and I think, these are the two teams you talk about and you say, who's undeserving in the bracket? Should Notre Dame be in? Should Vandy be in? Should Alabama be out? Should Oklahoma be out? This is the only playoff game at this point that I have a bet on right now, and I've got Alabama at I actually got them at plus 1.5, but I'm going to call it Pick'em for this podcast. Westgate Superbooks got Pick'em on this game. I know BetMGM still got Oklahoma as a 1.5 point favorite, but that's the only spots out there where Alabama's not favored, as far as I can tell on the betting screen right now. And it's hard to get excited about hyping a bet on Alabama, considering the way this team has played since late October and has not played well. Because the most impressive stretch for the Tide was in the middle of the season when they beat Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Tennessee over that 4-week stretch. And since then, the Tide not been very impressive. That said, I don't think Oklahoma's been all that impressive either, especially the offense. But we talk about the vaunted Sooners defense a lot of times. Tim, when these teams met in Tuscaloosa on November 15th, as you alluded to, Alabama outgained Oklahoma 406-212. Ty Simpson passed for 326 yards in that game. I guess you could say he passed for 400 if you want to include the 75 yards on the pick 6 for Oklahoma. So I bet on Georgia against Alabama last week in the SEC title game. Well, I'm going to roll with the Tide here. I'm going to switch sides and roll with the Tide. I think this Oklahoma offense has got too many issues, and I like to bet the favored team. Look, when you have an upset the first time teams play and the favored team loses, I like to bet on that favorite in the rematch, and that's Alabama here.
Yeah, a lot of similar points for me. And, you look at Alabama and you think about what we were talking about Saturday night and prior to the rankings being unveiled on Sunday, and then Notre Dame kind of goes scorched earth and everything turns to crapping on Notre Dame. But for a while it was, does Alabama belong in, right? Look how poorly they played on Saturday. And I think that discussion will ramp back up next week when we reconvene. And betting on this Alabama team right now, the way that they're playing offensively, being held to negative 3 yards rushing against Georgia, having, I believe, 70 yards in the first half, 100 after 3 quarters. Is this a team you really want to bet on? But I think it's also fair to say, to your point, is Oklahoma a team you want to bet on? If not for a broken coverage against LSU late in that game, do they lose to LSU, a team that, was wildly underwhelming this year in the LSU Tigers? So, Yeah, I'm with you. I took a little bit on Alabama here. It's funny to look at where this game was, in the middle of November, 6.5 point spread. Oklahoma gets the win in Tuscaloosa. Now we're looking at a pick 'em, but you got to obviously account for home field and whatnot. But I'm with you. I did play a little bit of Alabama. Will be a best bet here on the podcast. Another game, Matt, and of the four, certainly the one that I'm most excited about, the game on noon on Saturday, Miami taking on Texas A&M. And Miami, when the first installment of the rankings came out in early November, Matt, they were number 18. Well, there was a reason for that. They weren't playing really good football. They had lost to SMU. They had lost at home to Louisville, a game that both you and I liked, the Louisville Cardinals there in that spot back in October, but they're playing really good ball right now. Texas A&M, last time we saw them, they lost to Texas. What do you make of this spot with Miami heading to Kyle Field on Saturday, December 20th?
I don't really know what to make of this spot, to be honest. And let's say you don't have to bet every game on the board or having a strong opinion on every game. These are two teams I like to fade. And obviously, that fade strategy has not worked with Texas A&M too often this season. It did for me in the Texas game. I don't like to bet on Miami. I don't like the coach quarterback combination. And this, I can tell you almost certainly, this game's going to be a stay away for me. I don't trust either team. So, Tim, I'm not going to force a play on this game.
Yeah, so I did put in a little bet today on the under in this game, under 51.5. We'll count it for, best bet purposes. Am I in love with it? No. Maybe I'm forcing it, like you mentioned. But I do think about the battle up front is going to be incredible when you look at Texas A&M's defensive line, or offensive line, I should say, versus Miami's defensive line. I love what I've seen at the end of the season from this Miami defensive front. And I do like the way Miami's been playing. We have Brett Ciancia on every week, and he's got his pick six plus where he grades every game out. In the last 4 games, Miami's been playing like a top 5 team. Texas A&M, not really, right? Texas A&M's kind of been a little bit off as of lately. So I lean towards Miami here in this spot, but I think a lot of it comes back to, Matt, as you kind of pointed out, can you trust Carson Beck in a big spot like this? Can you trust Mario Cristobal in a big spot like this? And I think that's a fair question to ask at this point. I really do like this Miami defense. I love their coordinators. So for me, I'm going to lean a little bit towards the under. We'll call it an official play here, but 51.5, I think this could be kind of a feeling out process early next Saturday morning down there at Kyle Field between two teams that I think are going to be struggling a bit to get it rolling offensively against two pretty decent defenses.
Tim, that's actually a pretty good point there. And you also mentioned that early start at the end of that, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 Eastern. I don't like that start time for that game next week. And I don't know, players are not the same, they're not the same as you and I. They probably don't stay up till 5 in the morning. But I would be sleepy at that kickoff time. I know that. I typically do like to look at unders a little bit more in the morning games because I think teams are more likely to get off to a sluggish start. And when you talk, these defenses got plenty of talent. And I think sometimes when you get in the bigger games, the coaches get a little tighter, more conservative and a little tighter with their play calling here. But they don't want their quarterback to make the one big mistake to blow it up, or they don't want to take too many chances. So 51 is a key number in totals, and 51.5 is hanging out there pretty much everywhere right now. So I guess if you said, hey, you got to force a play on this game, it would be the underdog or the under, and I think the under might be the better of the two plays.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see if we do get when we reconvene next week. Has this moved at all? It's always interesting to take these bets early. All right, let's get to the other two playoff games. Once again, pointing it out, we'll dive into these games deep dive next week. We got a rematch of a game we saw earlier this year where Tulane beat Ole Miss 45-10, Matt. And now we get a rematch of it. Tulane wins the American. They're a 17.5-point underdog at Ole Miss. And look, we know the situation at hand. Both these coaches are moving on, but one of them is still coaching. John Summerall will be the coach of Florida, but he is still coaching Tulane. Ole Miss, they have a new head coach. His name is Pete Golding. It is not Lane Kiffin. They have promoted from within, Matt, for this one to try to have some stability down there. Charlie Weiss Jr. and a bunch of the offensive members of the staff have returned. They will coach, but obviously Kiffin not there. 17.5 the number here for Tulane and Ole Miss, a rematch of a game we've already had once this year.
Yeah, and in fact, in that first game between these teams, when Ole Miss rolled 45-10, Jake Retzlaff had 56 yards passing. He had 51 yards rushing, but no defense held down Jake Retzlaff like Ole Miss did. And Pete Golding is obviously, I think, going to be jacked up to coach this game. As his staff is going to be extremely well prepared. This is a huge test. All eyes are going to be on this Ole Miss coaching staff in this game. There's obviously a lot of talk about it. They got some help coming back, like you mentioned, to coach this game. This is the one spot where I feel like you can really play Ole Miss. They're going to be really geared up for this one. And I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout as lopsided as the rematch or as the first game in the rematch. Like he says, a 35-point game the first time around. But I would only bet Ole Miss here. And I would only lay the points with the favorite because I think it's more likely to be Rebels win by 20 or more than Tulane shows up and plays a great game and Ole Miss looks distracted and maybe not well coached. I think Ole Miss is going to be really well prepared. I expect the coaches and players to be fired up for this one. After this game, Tim, might be when we can bet against Ole Miss. You can look for a bet against spot for the Rebels, but this game I think is a play on for the home favorite.
I think you're 100% right. That was my thought is, all right, let's have Ole Miss win this game big, and then maybe we get a little bit of a suppressed price when they go play Georgia in the next round, as Georgia's playing really good right now. That game will be played at the Sugar Bowl on New Year's Day. It will be the last game of the 4 quarterfinals. But, yeah, that game, if we get Ole Miss, how do they make adjustments after that victory there? But, it is worth noting, looking back to the September 20th game, I always like to do this, the differences in point spread. Ole Miss closed as a 12-point favorite. The total was 61, and now we're looking at 17.5, total of 56.5. But it's hard for me in these spots to look at the G5 team. And, look, we had blowouts last year with the Power 4 teams. Tennessee got blown out. SMU got blown out. So certainly it could happen here. Matt, the game that I do have a bet on, and I'll still play it at the current price. I laid 21, is the game on next Saturday night. James Madison at Oregon. Look, it's not James Madison's fault that the ACC is a bunch of morons and didn't know how to properly put together tiebreakers. They went out, they won 12 games. Their lone loss came to Louisville, a game that they were competitive in the first half, and ultimately things got away from them in the second half, Matt. But it was funny. I was texting with a buddy who went to James Madison, and he was like, hey, man, I think Oregon's going to overlook JMU. I think they're going to be looking ahead to Texas Tech. I'm like, are you crazy?
No.
Are you nuts? This is a playoff game. They're at home. And the last time, Matt, they were in the playoff, they were embarrassed. They were down 34-0 as the number 1 overall seed. And Dan Lanning, I give him credit for this, man. That dude can get his team incredibly motivated. You think to the Colorado game, 2 years ago, you think to the Oklahoma State game earlier this year. I don't think I gave Oregon, Matt, enough credit for how good they are this year, right? You had a great bet on Indiana when they went to Autzen Stadium. Maybe they were a little bit overrated then, but Indiana's proven to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in college football, right? So I think this is a spot to lay it with Oregon. 21.5, I get it. You're not laying the best of the number. You got that hook on there. What if this game lands 42-21 or something like that? But I think you see a incredibly motivated Oregon team. And let's be honest, Matt, the Sun Belt Championship was not all that impressive by James Madison. They labored against a Troy team. They knocked out their starting quarterback, but still couldn't put him away until late. So I think Oregon makes a statement on Saturday night, next Saturday night, I should say. And I think that Oregon-Texas Tech game, to me, Matt, of the 4 possible matchups that we could get in the quarterfinals, to me, that's the most intriguing possible matchup. Have the 4-5 down in Miami on New Year's Day.
You're right. I'm not that fired up about these first-round playoff games, but once we get to the 8-team bracket. It's going to be really good. And by the way, I heard that Dan Lanning has had a rallying cry this season with his team, and he's saying, hey, Tim Murray is not giving this team enough credit. Let's go out and prove him wrong. And Tim, you are giving Oregon enough credit here into
honestly.
this. I think you are giving the Ducks enough credit going into this game. I don't think you overlook a playoff game like this. And by the way, Dan Lanning and that coaching staff, those guys are so young and enthusiastic. And those, you talk about Will Stein, who got the Kentucky job as the offense coordinator. Tosh Lapoy got the Cal job as a DC. Those are not the type of guys that are going to let a team overlook an opponent. I really like this Cal coaching staff. I'm not too worried about distractions with the OC and the DC, especially in this first game. I'll say this in the VSiN college playoff betting guide. I think that's what we're calling it. I picked Oregon in the bracket to win the whole thing. And I'm obviously extremely concerned about the Texas Tech game in the second round. If the Ducks got past Texas Tech, which is going to be very difficult to do, I think they can win the whole thing. But that's a game that actually concerns me quite a bit. But I was just kind of thinking outside the box. I know a lot of people are going to pick Ohio State to win it or Georgia to win it. I get it. But last year, you had a Big Ten team that did not play in the conference championship game, win 4 in a row in the playoffs. And guess what? That team also embarrassed Oregon in the Rose Bowl. So maybe this is payback for the Ducks this year. I'm not crazy about Dante Moore at quarterback. I like him. Don't love him in some of these big games coming up, especially against the Texas Tech defense. But I think, if anything, I don't play big favorites. If I do, it's very, very rare. I think Ole Miss and Oregon should roll in these first-round playoff games. I'm not looking to play the dogs in those two games.
Keep an eye on the injuries. DeCorian Moore, the stud freshman wide receiver, he's been out since week 9 or 10. Same goes for Gary Bryant Jr. I saw an interview with Dan Lanning, said they're progressing, but he didn't seem overly optimistic that they would be back, but just to keep an eye on that. They proved their depth to me, too, with the win over USC, win over Washington. I think you and I both had Washington plus the points, and that was a frustrating game if you backed the Huskies, but I think Oregon deserved the cover in that game. So that's a game where our colleague Stormy Bonantoni, she'll be on the sidelines for it. So excited for her to get a college football playoff game, Autzen Stadium. So cool opportunity, but I think it could be ugly in that one. So we'll see how it plays out. James Madison, not ultra impressive in that Sun Belt Championship game. But more on these games as the week goes on. Matt and I will be back on Thursday. Matt, I wanted to hit you on a couple of things here. I'll start with an injury to Indiana, and it's a defensive lineman, so it's not the end of the world, but man, everything's been perfect for the Hoosiers. We had Hoosier Wes on the podcast yesterday. He's still floating after that victory. Biggest win since, 1967, or maybe the biggest win in school history, beating Ohio State in that championship game. But they did lose Stephen Daly. Kirk Cignetti mentioned that it was a freak injury. He was high-fiving fans at Lucas Oil Field and hurt his leg. He has 19 tackles for losses, 5.5 sacks, 11 TFLs in the last 4 games, Matt. Once again, it's a defensive lineman. You can overcome those injuries. But when you look at Indiana, who's the number 1 seed going into this thing, they'll get the winner of Alabama, Oklahoma, and then they'll play the winner of Oregon and Texas Tech more than likely, Matt. What do you make of Indiana and their opportunity to win the national championship?
Well, it's certainly got a pretty good opportunity. I know the Stephen Daly injury is a bit of a setback. I watched the video of that when he was jumping up to high-five fans, and that's just a freak thing. There's no way you can know something like that is even in jeopardy of happening. But I think Indiana's got enough depth on defense. They're going to be okay. Last week on this podcast, I talked a lot about the Hoosiers and how they were I thought really it was like a perfect storm of a handicapping situation against Ohio State, because the Buckeyes were off the big win at Michigan. Their top 2 goals were beating Michigan, winning the national championship. They won the whole thing last year without playing in the Big Ten title game. In Indiana, that game meant everything to the Hoosiers and Kurt Cignetti last week. They were going to pour everything they had into it, and the game was in Indianapolis as well. And also Mendoza playing for the Heisman. So there were a lot more factors I thought that favored Indiana in that game. Hoosiers defense is legit, man. And that's one thing a lot of the apologists for Ohio State are overlooking in that game. Both teams missed a chip shot field goal, so don't tell me that, oh, Ohio State missed a short field goal or that game would have been tied. Indiana missed a chip shot field goal too earlier in the game. It just didn't happen at the end. Also, Ohio State had one touchdown drive in the game, and it was 25 yards. That's it, after a turnover. So the Indiana defense did a great job, I thought, shutting down the Ohio State offense, or at least limiting the big plays, very similar to what the Indiana defense did at Oregon that day in that win. So the defense could get the Hoosiers a long way. They got some playmakers on offense, too. They're pretty good. They could get there, and they have a pretty good draw. But something tells me they're going to come up a little bit short, Tim. I think the Big Ten championship was kind of like the pinnacle for Indiana, and I think they're probably going to come up a little bit short somewhere here along the road in the playoff.
You know, Matt, I asked this question to Wes, and I'm curious your perspective. Things have changed so much for bowl season. Bowl season used to be a time, heck, I've been at VSiN for 5 years now, and in the early portions of that time, I mean, bowl season was, I wouldn't say easy, but if you could read the tea leaves, know who's going to be motivated, you felt like you had a good gauge on it. How much over the years, Matt, from betting these bowl games, have you changed how you attack bowl games?
You know, somebody else asked me that question this week for a story they were writing, and I just gave them a bunch of random rambling thoughts about it because I don't know exactly how much I've changed. Yet I seriously, I can't answer it until after this bowl season's over, right? This is a pretty unique bowl season, Tim, that we really have not gone through something like this before, where you got a 12-team playoff, where those feel like to a lot of people the only games that matter. And you've also got the NIL situation, coaching changes. I mean, we have coaching changes every year, but now we got to coach even a playoff team. And it feels like a lot of these lesser bowls, there's going to be players sitting out or entering the transfer portal that when you try to handicap the games today, you have no idea if it's going to be the same team you're looking at, let's say on December 30th or whenever they're going to play the game. Look, I bet Hawaii +3 against Cal in the Hawaii Bowl. The next day, I find out that Jackson Harris, their top wide receiver, enters the transfer portal and has left the team. I didn't know that happened, but I think Hawaii's going to be okay because they got a deep wide receiver core. And like you said, Nick Cynical, who's been banged up a lot of the year, I think can kind of fill that role. But that's the type of stuff you hate to find out. You make a bet, and then you find out, oh, the top wide receiver's gone. Or, 2 offensive linemen are out. Or the starting defensive ends have left the team, whatever. All sorts of things like surprising things can happen. And you're a guy who likes to deliver bad news to people. So I'm expecting that we're going to have some bowl bets, and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have a text from Tim Murray. Oh, this is going to be bad news about this team. This quarterback's hurt. This guy's not going to play. So there's all sorts of bad news. It feels like you're on the side of the bad news more often than you are the good news when you bet the bowl season, that the teams you bet on, the key players are going to be out, whatever. I think more than ever, you just have to dig for information, try to get ahead of line moves. And this is the one time where I'll say, as a pro bettor, you probably are looking more to bet the number than the teams in some of these situations, Tim, where if you feel like you got some information where a number is going to move from -3 and it might run all the way up to 8 or 10, that you're just putting yourself in a position where you can lay 3 and take back something on the other side, maybe middle it or whatever. There's going to be a lot of situations in this bowl season where the lines run. And we've seen that in the past too, but I think we're going to see it more now. So I'm probably going to be more cautious. I guess my answer would be proceed with caution, more so even than in the past, even though we have talked about this in the past as well. I just feel like a lot of these bowl games have become meaningless in a sense, and a lot of these players are going to be looking to hit the transfer portal or not play in bowl games. I don't disagree with Notre Dame's decision to pull out of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Okay, do you think any Notre Dame players, especially the best players who are pro prospects, or certainly guys who have the ability to make money, and all these guys on Notre Dame's roster you would think have the ability to make money, do you think they want to risk injury playing in the prestigious Pop-Tarts Bowl? Hell no. I wouldn't play either. I would vote not to play. It's a different world. This is something we have not seen really in college football before, where you're going to have a lot of players thinking more about business decisions and more teams thinking about business decisions than you have in the past. So, but the last thing I'll say is I feel like no matter the circumstances, I always feel like the better handicappers find ways to win and find ways to overcome. So it's going to be a learning process too throughout the whole thing. And I'll probably bet fewer bowls than I have in the past. It's going to be, and I'll be more about trying to get ahead of line moves and put yourself in good positions when some of these numbers might run, but it's hard to predict how that's going to happen right now. I know you've heard about the Hawaii news yesterday with Jackson Harris too, and I think you had already bet the game, right? So the first thing you think is, "Damn,
Yep.
I had no idea that was going to happen," right?
Well, it's funny because I know you always give me the moniker of the deliverer of bad news. So I purposely did not text you when I found out the news about Jackson Harris, and you texted me. So, I put the shoe on the other foot. Speaking of which, Timmy Chang, the head coach of the Rainbow Warriors, will tell us how big of a loss it will be. We'll talk to him coming up here in a little bit. But no, I think you make a lot of good points. A couple of games that I have bet, it's funny. I was writing up the best bets for the VSiN college football guide for the playoffs, Matt. And one of my best bets was Army minus 140 on the money line. They had flipped from a dog to a favorite, but I was like, it's all right. Relatively cheap money line. Well, I wake up after submitting that, and the money line had already ran out to like minus 180. So, just keep an eye on it. I'll say this about the Army-UConn game and the Fenway Bowl. I talked about this one earlier in the week. UConn starting running back Cam Edwards. He's hit the portal. Skylar Bell. Can't imagine he's going to play in this one. I'm not saying lay 5.5 because you've missed, obviously, by far the best number. But if you're in like one of those confidence pools, I think Army is a very strong look in one of those confidence pools. But yeah, there are some good games, no doubt. We will talk about them, but keep an eye on the opt-outs. The one game, and I talked about this with Wes, North Texas, San Diego State, the New Mexico Bowl. Is Mestemaker going to play for North Texas? He hasn't been ruled out yet, but always keep an eye out and just kind of wonder, hey, who's going to play? What could ultimately happen? Final thought, Matt, I'll ask you regarding this before we get to just a best bet recap. The news with Sharon Moore, he's out at Michigan. A whole lot going on there. We don't need to get to it on a betting podcast, but we know he's gone. He has been fired. Biff Poggi and his sleeveless shirts will be the interim head coach for the Citrus Bowl down in Orlando on December 31st. Does that play into your handicap of this Michigan-Texas game? Right now, Michigan around a 6.5 or 7-point dog with their coach being surprisingly fired on Wednesday.
It's a great question because I went back and forth on this. My first, I think most people's first reactions are going to be, the Michigan program's in chaos, bet against the Wolverines in this game. They lost their coach. This is going to be a bet against spot. And I thought, well, maybe not. Maybe it's a positive for the Wolverines that the Sharon Moore situation has been erased because I think he's probably been a distraction to this team. And he's not a great coach by any stretch anyway. And maybe the team will show up better prepared for the bowl game without Sharon Moore and that distraction element. Those around the program have said that this was obvious to a lot of people. This was going on since late September. So I don't think it's a shock to a lot of people that this actually became news and that he got fired. You know what? On the Circa Friday Football Invitational show about, I'll say 6 weeks ago, sometime after I was in L.A. to watch the Michigan USC game, I mentioned to Derek Stevens, who's obviously a Michigan man. I said, Sharon Moore sucks as a coach, and Michigan's going to have to fire him and make a change. And Derek looked at me surprised. Really? And I said, yeah, Michigan's going to need a change at football coach because the more I watch the Wolverines this season, Tim, I'm going to ask you. You watched Bryce Underwood, the $12 million quarterback, the entire season. Was he any better at the end of the season than he was at the beginning?
No, not really. No, the offense was very pedestrian this year.
And it just didn't look like a well-coached team. There weren't many playmakers out there. You could see the decline. Once Jim Harbaugh leaves, Jesse Minter leaves. It's not just Harbaugh. There are other coaches left. And Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator for the Chargers now, hey, he might be in line for the Michigan job. Who knows? But
Sure.
you see a decline in the program when you have that coach leave and he hands it off to his assistant. And it was obvious it was not working with Sherrone Moore. And I felt like after that USC game that Michigan was going to have to make a coaching change. And when you know that, it's better to do it sooner than later. Obviously, this controversy forces their hand. So who's it going to be? Is it going to be Kalen DeBoer? It's interesting. Is Kalen DeBoer going to leave Alabama, go to Michigan? I know a lot of people think that's possible, that he's looking for an exit door. He's not loved in Tuscaloosa right now. Could it be a guy like Jedd Fisch Washington? I think Jesse Minter can make some sense in terms of coming back too. I don't know about your guy, Brian Kelly. I don't think Brian Kelly would get the job, but I think his name might be tossed out there.
I know he was interested in it a couple of years ago when Sherrone Moore ultimately got the job, hired from within. But yeah, I don't know if it does affect the bowl game one way or the other. Biff Poggi, as mentioned, he steps in and ultimately takes the reins. So we will see. Speaking of Jedd Fisch, Matt, Washington does play the first bowl game. L.A. Bowl is the last installment of the L.A. Bowl, as our guy Brett McMurphy reported earlier on Thursday. Washington, a pretty significant favorite over Boise State. I wanted to make a case for the dog. You remember we had Cage Casey, the big left tackle, in studio preseason from Boise State. He's already opted for the NFL draft, but it is uncertain if he's going to play or not. Maddox Madsen gutted it out, coming back from injury against UNLV. I don't think this is a very good Boise team compared to previous Boise teams. Maddox Madsen and company, I think they kind of put it all on the line to beat UNLV. Now, a week later, you have to turn around and play Washington. The reason I haven't bet this game, though, Matt, is I don't know the status of Washington running back Jonah Coleman, their wide receiver Denzel Boston, a couple of defensive players like Takario Davis. Are those guys going to play? If they do play, I think Washington's the side. But once again, it's kind of the theme of this whole bowl season is who the hell's playing, right? So maybe you find out some news on Friday or Saturday and it makes you lead into a bet, but hard for me to bet this game because on the surface, if Washington's full strength, I think they might blow out Boise State, but I just don't know if their big-time players are going to be playing. Damon Williams will be playing. He's, got eligibility left, but I think that last part, too, is worth noting, Matt, is Jedd Fisch now going to be maybe turning his eye a little bit towards this search at Michigan?
Well, you bring up a lot of good questions there, and that's what I'm talking about. You got to proceed with caution here because the Washington team you think you're laying 9.5 points with today might not be the Washington team that shows up on the field at SoFi on Saturday. I wonder. See, when you have the expansion of the playoffs, it makes the other bowls even less relevant than they were previously were. Tim, if you're Damon Williams, why would you play in this game? If you're any of those Jonah Coleman and Denzel Boston and the guys you mentioned, why would you play in the LA Bowl at SoFi? Seriously, why would you play? Because you got NIL money hanging out there for next season. Let's go say you go out and blow out your knee, which can happen in any football game you play. I don't know why those guys would play in this game. I would lean – DraftKings moved to 10. I would probably lean to Boise plus 10, but I have not bet this yet. And here's another thing I don't like about this bowl season. They're starting bowl games this week, and the schedule's been pushed up a week in a lot of these games. Typically, this game would not be until December 20th, right, or a little bit later. And now we're playing this on this Saturday, the same day of the Army-Navy game, which is – I don't like this either. And I just wonder on both sides, Boise and Washington, how many key guys would want to go out there and risk injury in a game like this? And when you see Brett McMurphy's report about this being the last year of the LA Bowl, Tim, I think the whole bowl structure is in jeopardy of coming crumbling down, right? Falling apart because a lot of these games are just going to become even more meaningless than they have in the past. And I hate to use the word meaningless because when there's money, when there's a betting line on a game and there's money on the line, no game is meaningless. But in terms of what the coaches and players are looking at from their perspective, bowl games like this don't really mean anything at all.
Yeah, you look at some of the G5 teams, I think they'll be motivated. We mentioned Hawaii Cal. I think that'll be one of the better games
Right.
for this bowl season. But there are some games, no doubt. But, that's where we have to try as handicappers to figure this thing out from a motivational standpoint. But try to take in all the information. It's impossible to get it all, but try to take in as much as you possibly can. All right, we're going to cut this one a little bit shorter today. As mentioned, Timmy Chang going to join after me and Matt wrap up here. So looking forward to talking to the head coach of Hawaii. But let's do an early best bet recap.
Best Bets Recap.
All right, Matt, as mentioned a couple of times, we'll go in-depth on the 4 playoff games next week and probably a little bit more on bowl games if we get some more information. But what bets do you have right now? And you also have a pending wager that hopefully will cash on Saturday night.
Hey, if it doesn't cash, I'm going to feel good for some of the guys I know who have long shot tickets on Diego Pavia to win the Heisman. I know guys who've got 50 to 1, 300 to 1 on Pavia to win the Heisman. So if Fernando Mendoza does not cash, I'll be happy for those guys cashing their big tickets. I've got Mendoza I on this podcast 6 weeks ago, plus 250. And I think it's going to be a close race. I expect him to win a really tight vote this week. But that's my one pending bet. Last week, 2-0, winners with Georgia and Indiana. 46, 34, and 3 on this podcast. I've got 2 plays here so far, and that's it. Like I said, proceed with caution, kind of my theme here. Alabama, pick 'em. And look, the Hawaii Bowl is a huge game for Hawaii, and I know you're going to talk with Timmy Chang about this. I bet Hawaii plus 3, but I'm not going to put that out as the best bet here, Tim, because the 3 is not available right now. It's 1.5, 2, 2.5 out there. So Circa's got 54 on the total. Cal, Hawaii over 54 is the best bet I'll put out there today. I think with 2 run-and-shoot coaches, and Nick Rolovich and Timmy Chang, and quarterbacks they trust to throw the ball all over the yard, you're not going to see conservative play calling in this game. And I like the over a little bit more than the side right now.
Last week, 2-0 for me as well, Matt. So hopefully we can keep it rolling into bowl season and the playoffs. So last week, common play between you and me was Georgia. We both got home there despite late money coming in on Alabama, which didn't really understand. And then the money line parlay with Texas Tech and Boise State. Also from the preseason, Boise State to win the Mountain West got there as well. But for the season, 46, 44, and 4, and also Alabama to make the playoff did come home, I guess, begrudgingly. I would have preferred my Irish to get in. But a couple of plays, Matt, you mentioned, numbers are moving. Hawaii plus 3, we talked about already on this podcast. Army money line, I talked about on VSiN Primetime. That number's gone crazy. So numbers available right now. 3 plays for me, Matt. Common play, Alabama, pick 'em next Friday night. I will go under in Miami and Texas A&M 51.5, and then 21.5. I laid it. I actually laid 21, talked about it here on the podcast. That's not available right now, so I'll still take the hook. 21.5 will roll with Oregon laying that chalk, so hopefully the hook doesn't bite me in the backside here. So 46, 44, and 4 on the year. And hopefully we can keep rolling into the postseason. Matt, we'll be back next week, so looking forward to that to go more in-depth on the playoff games. But much appreciated, sir, and we'll talk next week.
Okay, you bet. Sounds good.
There he is, Matt Youmans. We'll take a quick break. As mentioned, the head coach of the Rainbow Warriors, Timmy Chang. He will join us next right here on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. All right, we're back, and I am super pumped to talk to my guy, Timmy Chang. We started the season, we were just joking off air. We started the season going out to Hawaii, and I actually want to take a step back real quickly because you and I have gotten to know each other a little bit from Mountain West Media Days and you coming on this show inside our studio in Circa. And I texted you over the summer about the Stanford game, just kind of giving you a little bit of guff. I think you guys were like a slight underdog at the time. And Timmy, you go, you got to come out here. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way this is not going to happen. And lo and behold, thanks to a lot of people, thanks to our guys, Rainbow Authentics, who've been a sponsor all year, we made it happen. So I guess, Coach, we got to make this happen every year, right?
It's got to be tradition. It does. It does. And week zero kind of, started historically, with the University of Hawaii football program, playing the 13 games and having to travel and do those things. And so, I think the closeness of where we are in sports and what you guys do and what you guys bring to sports, it only makes sense, that, the late night game and the Chase game gets put on your guys' stage front and center. And we really, really appreciate that. And so if we can make this a tradition, I mean, let's continue it, right? 1 year leads to 2 years leads to 5. Now we're talking 10, 20 years. I mean, I could see it.
Well, we just did our big giveaway. I still got the helmet. I got to ship this out to our winner. So we got the Timmy Chang helmet we're sending out. We got the gear we're sending out. So people are going to be repping it all across the country. We're making it, we're building it up. But, you talk about the unique aspect of Hawaii, from the late night game to week 0 to this bowl game. And, I did some work with Navy over the years, and it felt like when they would go to the Military Bowl, it was kind of like, all right, well, we get to play a game on our home field. And there's other institutions that have that as well, that it feels like it's a downer to play a bowl game on your home field. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like it's the exact opposite for Hawaii. You guys seem to embrace the Hawaii Bowl. So when you got bowl eligible beating Colorado State, Coach, you knew, I think at that time, we're going to be playing on Christmas Eve. What does the Hawaii Bowl mean for your program? I mean, heck, you played in a bunch. You're a 2-time MVP of this bowl game. Is this a bowl game you guys embrace? Is this one of the goals that you have, is to play the last game of the year at home in the bowl game?
It really is. It really is. I personally, having played in it, having coached in it, but those 3 years that I played in it with my teammates, it was such a great experience. We had a great turnout. It's like it's not another home game, but it's like another home game for us. I can't. I've grown up here. I lived here, so I'm biased. But there is no other place like Hawaii in the month of December, leading up to December 31st on New Year's Eve, and letting all the fireworks go. I mean, is one of the greatest places to be, is here on Oahu or in the islands. As you can see in the background, I mean, it gets as bad as just a cloudy, rainy a little wind, and that's as bad as it gets all year. But we enjoy the game, we embrace the game. The goal is always to make the college football playoffs.
Sure.
And if that were to happen, and God blesses us to be there, I mean, we would take it in a heartbeat. But playing at home, it's impactful and it means something to us. And my guys are really excited. We get to spend 5 nights and 6 days in the Moana Surf Rider. It's part of Skeleton, right there on Waikiki Beach. We get to enjoy our families. Our guys that have families get to enjoy theirs. And so we're really looking forward to enjoying the week. But it's the matchup and who we're playing and the storylines behind it are pretty amazing.
Yeah, let's get into that, because it is, I was just talking to Matt Youmans about it, and Matt and I were the ones who came out to the island to watch the Stanford game. And it's, right now betting these bowl games, discussing these bowl games is really challenging because you don't know who's going to play. But it certainly feels like, and we can get into the one notable opt-out that you guys had just a couple days ago regarding the wide receiver position. But you look at Cal and the great news for their program, that someone I imagine that you know very well, Jaron Kiave Sangapulatelli, he's going to be back for that program. We don't know the status of Nick Rolovich, whether or not he will be on that staff next year, but he's still coaching on an interim basis. So I want to start there with you and Coach Rolovich, because he was the head coach of this program prior to you. I know there was a stopgap in between, but you guys have a really unique relationship. You played together. You both are head coaches of this program. What is your relationship with Nick Rolovich, and what are you looking forward to the most coaching against him on Christmas Eve?
Uh, the one thing I can say is what a great guy. He is just a great person. I learned a lot from him when I was 18 years old. One competing with him for the starting job here at the University of Hawaii as we're both playing quarterback position. And then when I got injured and saw him play and just an amazing run of football, played at the highest level in my eyes. And I just kind of learned so much from him. And as we grew in our careers, he came back and became a GA, and then he started his coaching career, and I started my coaching career a little bit later. Our paths, would only cross and competing against each other as I was at Nevada and he was the head coach here. But stayed in contact, and I think that's the most important thing is that we stayed in contact. I would always bounce things off of him, and there's not too many people that have been in this position as the head coach at the University of Hawaii, and some of the things that go on and its challenges, and he understands them and he went through them. And so we share that special relationship, Tim, that you talk about, having gone through the same processes together, which makes us close. And very I respect him at the highest level. I'm proud of him. In the position that he's in now. And then I just see success for him, and whatever happens in the near future on whatever program gets him is going to be lucky that they got a guy like that, because he's a people first type of guy, and then the value of what his knowledge and X's and O's and what we do, schematically in our offense. I mean, he's just going to continue to add value somewhere.
Well, the funny note is, and I'm sure they'll bring it up on the broadcast, the last game he coached for Hawaii was the Hawaii Bowl, a 38-34 win over BYU. Cole McDonald threw for 493 in that game. I got to get to some of the numbers for the Hawaii Bowl. They're just outrageous. But I'm curious, as a opposing coach, but also someone who I got to imagine knows JKS from another level. His brother was on your team as well. What's your relationship, or what was your relationship with JKS, and what stands out about him as a player as you guys go up against him on Christmas Eve?
Yeah, great family. Our I think my roots tie into their family a little bit further back with having played with their uncles
Mhm.
at St. Louis High School. Watching John kind of grow up, and his brother John committing to us and being here part of who we were. He transferred out and played at Portland State. Jaron has always been a special player as we watched him in Hawaii and played for the Camel Sabres, who just won the state championship out here. He's just been a great player. Comes from a great family, just been a great player, very humble, type of guy, and he just goes about his business. There's something about him that his release, him understanding where to go with the ball, him being able to put it in different spots, make different throws. Um, that's what makes him a great quarterback. And Cal's got a good one. And so, they're just kind of those storylines with Rolo and Jaron coming back here. It just makes for a great game. And the Hawaii Bowl did a great job of really picking out the opponent. Us getting bowl eligible, wanting to be here, like we said, wanting to play in this game every year. It just starts to make for a great narrative, and moving forward, I really see this bowl game becoming a staple.
Yeah, I mean, look, I joked, it's my favorite Christmas movie. It's the Hawaii Bowl. Christmas Eve, you sit back, you got the tree, you got all the presents underneath it, and now you're sitting back and you're watching football. It's the only game on, really, of any sport, right? No basketball, no hockey. It's the only thing on the way that you guys like it. All right, enough about Cal. Let's talk about your team. We talk about it a lot here on this show. People joke, why do you talk so much about Hawaii? But you guys are, unique to what we want to do from as we've discussed, kind of from a betting standpoint. But you have a unique playing style, and Your quarterback, Micah Alejado, seems to fit exactly what you want, Coach. Is that fair to say? Like the quarterback, the prototypical quarterback for your system, it feels like it is a guy like Micah Alejado.
100%, 100%. He's what you want in a leader. He's what you want character wise. How he goes about his work, how he goes about his business, how he gets others around him to work harder and be better. I mean, he makes me better as a coach because of his level of understanding of football. And so when he's out there and he's tough as nails, man. I mean, he took that shot in Stanford and
Yep.
you were there and you saw him limp around the field and made throws. I mean, he's kind of really been that guy for us, going all the way back to the year before New Mexico, throwing for 470 in the air and um taking over that offseason and having that staple game underneath him. It just kind of propelled him, to have a great season this year. And so really proud of him and what he does and what he's doing. And so, we look forward to having a good battle and matchup.
The news comes out and you try to keep your as updated as possible on who's playing, who's not playing, and you see the news that Jackson Harris, who is one of your top wide receivers, leading in yardage, is hitting the transfer portal, and that's the day and age we're headed, and he's likely headed to, I would imagine, a P4 program. But what does that do for your offense? How different will it look without Jackson Harris, and who steps in his role with his production gone?
Yeah, it's a next man up mentality. Jackson has done unbelievably well for us. Having come in from Stanford, I don't think he's, just not knowing everything. I don't think he's had a lot of experience and playing time as he came here, but really blossomed within our system, and we got to see that. He just needed an opportunity, and Hawaii was able to give him one. Moving forward, I think it's just we got guys in the stable that are ready to go and play. We do what we do, and it's like Coach Rolo knows it becomes challenging, right? When you continue to counter and make defenses wrong and those type of things. And so I expect our guys to respond well and stick together and go fight and protect our homeland, man.
Well, you've got the secret weapon of all secret weapons. Okay. You guys, you're like the Dallas Cowboys of college football, because as soon as you cross midfield, you could kick a field goal with arguably the best kicker in college football. We'll find out. We're recording this on Thursday. I believe the awards come out on Thursday. We'll find out, fingers crossed, if Kansei Matsuzawa is the Lou Groza Award winner. But this story has captivated college football. And, just to make a little bit of a note on the side, we've been promoting it, tokyoto.com. If you want some of the merch, head on over to the website. Our friends over at Rainbow Authentics have been hooking it up, so make sure you check it out. But take us back to the origin, right? How did you find Kansei? How does this all come together? How does he become the best kicker in college football?
I really think it's timing. Timing meets opportunity. And you have a guy that works really hard, really focused, has a great mindset. I think all those things just kind of come into fruition. Coach Sheffield, our special teams coach, we're looking for kickers. He says, "Hey, how about a foreign Japanese kicker? What do you think about that?" I said, "Well, where's he at?" He goes, "Well, he's in the middle of the country. He's in he's in the middle of the country." And I go, "Well, does he want to come this way?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Who are we fighting for him?" He goes, "Well, we got this school and this school." And I said, "Okay, well, let's go. He's gonna stop on the way back here and before he goes home to Japan. Why don't we, why don't we go see him and talk to him?" And so he does that, and we end up visiting him, and we said, "Hey, if you win this battle, okay, we will give you a scholarship." And so we had another player, and he went through the process. He ended up winning the battle, and I was honored to give him the scholarship. And he's crying, and he's so grateful, right? But I think just having that unbelievable mindset of I'm just gonna just continue to work on my craft to become the best. and he's had a lot of great people around him. Because we're so close to Asia,
Mhm.
we do have Japanese nationals that play baseball as well. We had a basketball player, and so they kind of tight knit and kind of grow together. But all these little factors help into to who he is and what his mindset is. And so he just went out there and just he had the opportunity. If I told you a story where Tim, like, we had a training camp competition, and we were at the 50-yard line right hash, and he missed three in a row, and it was for the offense running and the defense running, and we pinned the two kickers against each other just to put some pressure on him. Kansei missed all three in training camp.
Wow.
And that's how he started training camp. But from that day, he bounced immediately back. So when you talk about mindset, like, he bounced immediately back, and he never missed a field goal until the last one that we kicked at the end of the season, which we all felt, we just felt heartbroken for him. And he came off with a big smile, and to us, he is the best kicker in the country. You've been there, you've seen some of those
Yeah.
winds and the rain and the things that we have put, and it's moving. I mean, it's 20-mile-an-hour gusts, 30-mile-an-hour gusts, and he's hitting it with it. He's hitting it into it, and so in our mind, he is the best kicker in the country.
Yeah, I mean, being out there, look, I'll be honest, week 0, I'm doing my prep work. We talked to Coach Thurman, we talked to Micah, we talked to Kanoa Lay. We're trying to cover it all for this week 0 game, and then lo and behold, Kansei Matsuzawa comes out there, buries 3 field goals, hits the game winner. I'm standing under the goalpost. I'm like, these weren't some cheapy field goals. These were some bombs, man. Perfect end over end. I'm like, whoa. And then the story grows. So, one of the unique things certainly about, week 0 and Kansei Matsuzawa, one of the greatest stories really in college football this year. All right, before I let you run, Coach, I do want to talk a little bit about the unique aspect of your home field. And, you've mentioned it before. I know we tiptoe around it. I don't want to get you in trouble, but you guys have been spectacular against the number at home. Just what is it about defending your home turf and why you guys play so well on the island?
Yeah, I really do think it's our culture. It's the pride that we have. The guys that come into our program, that they open their, whether they're from here or whether they come from the different parts of the country, or even different countries.
Yeah.
They open their arms, and they get embraced here, right? That's part of our community. That's part of who we are. It's part of the Aloha identity. I think you've experienced that in us just setting up, that pre that first
Oh
game's
my
week
gosh.
0 show. I mean, you've experienced that love, that aloha spirit that we talk about. And so, our when you talk about numbers and the ATS, right? It's all inclusive, because when you have some people, and you have a community, and you have a locker room, and you have a culture that cares about each other, you start to get a team where it just hits a little different. It means something a little bit more. And so that's what the islands represent. We're the only professional team. There is none, right? So this University of Hawaii athletic program, in all sports, it takes that flagship. And I mean, it's very prideful. It's a very prideful state. We are the 50th state, so it always feels like we have to. We're like an outsider, but we're trying to be an insider, right? We're trying to gain that affection, that love from our country. But at the same time, we build great athletes out here. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about JKS, you talk about Micah Alejado. You got 3 other QBs in the NFL at one time start at the university, sorry, from Hawaii. And that's special. So we have Hawaii athletes all around the country, but when they stay home and they play here, it just hits a little different. And they go out there, and they go fight for each other. And so um it's a unique situation. That's why I take a lot of pride in coaching my alma mater, and I felt it too, that it made me stay home when I was 18 years old, right? As I was getting recruited, and I saw it, and I was if ever I was going to get an opportunity to be the head coach of this school, these are the principles that I would fall back on and to build our program to where we wanted to get.
Well, it's been an incredible year. I know it was a long buildup to get to this point, but 8 wins this year, an opportunity in the bowl game, and I just want to point these out for your quarterback. Coach threw up 405 yards in the Hawaii Bowl back in 2004. The last time Cole McDonald threw 493, and the late great Colt Brennan set the record, 559 passing yards in 2006. So just sprinkle that into Micah's mind, some of the prolific numbers that have gone on in the Hawaii Bowl. All right, Coach?
Yeah, the kid just seems to beat he seems to beat all the records, and so I'm pretty sure he's going to have his eye on some of these numbers.
Hey, Coach, appreciate it. It's been an amazing year. Our podcast has kind of adopted you guys, and it's been amazing. Obviously, from Mike at Rainbow Authentics to you to everybody out there. You mentioned it. I'll tell a quick story. Like, you brought up the idea. I'm like, how the hell is this going to come together, right? And then, Nahoku Jewelers has become a sponsor of the network. I'm wearing my Kahala shirt right now. Like, it really, you mentioned it. You felt the aloha when you went out there. Even, our radio affiliate went above and beyond. So it was eye-opening to me to really get embraced by the Hawaii culture out there. And you guys also came through with a nice win, which I think made a lot of our listeners happy back in week 0 too.
Right on. Well, again, we're already, the season's going to end, but as coaches, we're already moving into the next phases. So we got to plan year 2 already.
Yep, VSiN's in the portal. We're ready to get the recruiting pitch, to come back out there for another game. Coach, best of luck in the Hawaii Bowl. We'll all be watching. There's nothing else on Christmas Eve. You guys are the show. Much appreciated, and really appreciate the time and all the hospitality this year.
I appreciate it, Tim. And tell everybody we miss them. And so we look forward to seeing you guys soon.
There he is, Timmy Chang. That'll do it. This is the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.